horrors of forecasting, bias and noise in predicting workshop revenue. Conferences and workshops are the lifeblood of many associations, and being able to predict revenue from these events is essential to our survival, particularly during challenging times like these, when COVID has made determining event attendance horribly difficult. The problem is that our forecasts can possibly be filled with errors. Recently, economists Daniel Kahneman, Olivier Sabany, and Cass R. Sunstein wrote a book titled Noise, A Flaw in Human Judgment, where they examine the impact of two kinds of error, bias and noise. They explain these concepts through the image of teams throwing darts at a target, which for the upcoming holiday will change to throwing axes. The first group is all near or on the bullseye. This group's throws are accurate. Team B steps up and throws their axes above, below, to the right and to the left of the target. The throws are noisy, spread apart. Team C throws the axes, and they end up in a tight group in the right bottom portion of the target, biased, lacking accuracy, but tightly grouped. Team D throws in roughly the same area as Team C, but have lost the grouping. Team D's axes spread out in the right bottom portion of the target. These throws are both noisy and biased. Do you like noisy data? Noise happens in forecasting sometimes by no fault of our own. I worked for an organization that had been running conferences and workshops around the world for decades, and they asked me how to examine how they had done with regard to their goals over the years. I ran into a challenge, however. The important thing for our organization was the workshops and conferences net revenue. And to ensure that we met our net revenue goals, our meeting planners were constantly updating budgets based on how the event was going. Noise was entering through several external sources. Updating budgets is a common practice to counter the effects of noise, but it makes it difficult to track predictions unless those early budgets are readily available. As an example to illustrate the issue, let's imagine an organization, the Games Organization Under London, or GOOL, that had a total of 49 workshops and small conferences over the years we examined. If events were designed for positive net revenue, GOOL expected roughly 20% net to ensure they were able to provide for other non-revenue generating programs. And very often they hit these goals. The average final budget for each of the workshops was calculated to be $91,047 in gross revenue, and the actual gross revenues were on average $91,381, missing the mark on the plus side by only $334 on average. Not bad, right? Well, you can see in the following scatter plot that for each of the 49 workshops, the difference between the final budget net revenue and the actual net revenue crowds around the $0 mark, i.e., hitting our budget net revenue goal. There are some a bit above our goal, one being $30,000 or more above the goal, and some are quite a bit below the goal. One is $40,000 below, but they all average out. The question is, how much noise is in our estimates? Noisy estimates make Jack a dull boy. The best way to calculate the noise in the estimates is to calculate the standard deviation of the difference between the final budget and the actuals in net revenue. In the above scatter plot, it's $13,412, which means that 2/3 of all the estimates will either be $13,412 above or below our workshop or conference goal. But even if you don't want to do the math needed to calculate the standard deviation, just looking at the scatter plot will give you a sense of how much error you may have. Compare the above graph with this one that has a lot less noise. The plots in this scatter plot are much more closely bunched, more closely resembling Team A in Kahneman's dart example. With this kind of plot, GOOL can be more certain each workshop will reach its goal, than in the previous graph. Bias. We all go a little mad sometimes. The comparison above still doesn't show how well Gould budgeted from the beginning, which was the question my association had originally posed. And it is more than just an academic one, especially when we're concerned about new business development. We need to know whether we are good at making decisions about our budgets. Let's continue the case of Gould. Gould's meeting planner worked with volunteer-led organizing committee to determine how many people they expected to attend the conference, how much sponsorship they predicted, and how much advertising they believed they could sell. The meeting planner then determined the prices for the venue, the promotional materials, and the food and beverages to determine the costs and ultimately the amount to charge each participant. So it would give the association a net revenue of $20,000. The gross revenue needed for this on average was budgeted to be roughly $119,000. When the analytics group in the organization compared the initial budget with the actuals, they found that the predictions were consistently substantially below the gross revenue budgeted. After looking at their initial budgets and comparing them to their actuals, they realized they had been consistently overestimating gross revenues in their workshop budgets. The first thought we might have is that if we can just adjust our budgets, then this isn't a problem. Except that our meeting planners have to spend time working on the budget changes, renegotiating with vendors to decrease the expected costs. They're here. Solutions, that is. What is the answer? Data is. By examining the data from our previous workshops and understanding the noise and bias in our predictions, we can better forecast the costs and revenue. We can even use this data to understand whether and how much disruptions in the lives of the people we serve impact the revenue coming from our events. One of the reasons my organization asked me to analyze our workshop data was to estimate how much the decline in the oil industry was going to affect our conferences and workshops, how much we were going to miss the sponsorship, attendance, and booth sales goals. We were able to look back into our workshop and conference data for the past 20 years to estimate what the impact the rise and decline of oil prices had on our conference revenue, and were able to alter our estimates based on that. We were able to provide the same assessment for membership, offering a way to reassure the board that we were making the right decisions about our budgeting in difficult times. Once you have an understanding of your data, you can integrate a simple model that draws on the data to improve your predictions. Kahneman et al. Note in their book that a simple model beats humans for one simple reason: people's judgments are noisy. It's important to keep our noisy judgments in check, and the best way to do this is always to return to the data. Join the Data Analytics Network on October 5th as we examine this and other quick and easy wins that increase your association's bottom line.